like to do today is get your version of what happened.
Oh, you mean the truth?
Of course. First, just state your name and your occupation for the record.
Oh, Stu. Alternative health products.
Do you at the present time have any knowledge of the whereabouts of a Mr. Jack Burton or his...
Oh, will you leave him alone?
You could be in a great deal of trouble.
You leave Jack Burton alone.
Okay. But if I'm going to be your attorney, there are a few things that I have to know that still don't make any sense to me. Like, you really believe in magic?
You mean Irish sex magic?
Yes, and monsters and ghosts as well, I suppose.
Oh, sure. And that 5G gives you COVID-19.
And I suppose that you expect me to believe in sorcery as well.
Of course.
How can I know that? Help me out here. Please. How?
That was nothing. But that's always how it starts. Very, very small. Love that music. John Carpenter made that. He still performs it live. Okay, hello, welcome to Bad Country. Today we're doing another retro review. We're going to look at Big Trouble in Little China. As is the case of most of my favourite films from this strange little period in the middle of the 80s, it didn't do very well when it was first released. It bombed at the box office, the critics didn't understand it, and in the years since its release, it's developed a kind of second life as a very well-followed cult favourite. All the signs then are very good that this is another misunderstood classic. But much like the culturally questionable representation of the Chinese underworld beneath San Francisco's Chinatown, is there more to this movie than meets the eye? Let's take a look. Kurt Russell plays Jack Burton, a truck driver who apparently specialises in hauling gym equipment because, well, he doesn't look like any truck driver I ever met. Jack wins a bet with a friend, Wang Chi, played by Dennis Dunn, and to ensure that Wang pays his dues, Jack drives him to the airport to collect Wang's fiancée, Miao Yin, played by Susie Pai. She's flying in from Beijing to be married. I don't think she has a line in the whole film. This sets off a confusing sequence of events that makes so little sense, and makes increasingly little sense as it goes on, that it's almost pointless to describe. But I have a camera and a microphone, and it's a lockdown and a Sunday, so buckle up. Wang's fiancée is kidnapped at the airport by, I don't know, vaporwave pirates or something, and Jack and Wang give chase. They intrude on a Chinese funeral, which I can assure you is a very scary thing to do. It actually happened to me in Henan province when I was cycling through, and it was made very clear, very quickly, that I had not been invited. The funeral devolves into a gang fight between two rival Chinese gangs. Three characters from Mortal Kombat or something appear and kick lumps out of everyone. Jack runs his truck through a 2,000-year-old sorcerer called Lo Pan, who has some sort of very serious medical condition, and the truck is stolen, giving Kurt Russell a reason to hang around in the film, I guess. They return to Wang's restaurant where they meet Samantha from Sex and the City, the San Fran years, this absolute idiot, and Egg Shen, some sort of magical bus driver. They explain to Jack that when the Chinese arrived to build America, they brought with them thousands of years of mysticism and magic. Jack learns that that big Chinese wizard dude he ran over in his truck is actually the owner of a local telephone exchange or something, who was cursed by the first sovereign emperor of a unified China, Qin Shi Huang. To break the curse, Lo Pan must marry and then sacrifice a girl with green eyes or something, and Miao Yin apparently fits the bill. Jack and Wang break into the telephone exchange to recover Miao Yin. Jack's entire disguise to sneak into the telephone exchange involves just holding a phone, and that is really funny. But they're immediately caught, and then escape, releasing a bunch of trafficked women in the process in a completely unnecessary subplot that has no impact on anything. Samantha from Sex and the City is then kidnapped by a big orangutan. That gives Jack another reason to stay in this stupid film. Also, there's this thing. No one knows why, and it's pointless to ask about it. Lo Pan decides to marry Samantha from Sex and the City as well, since she also has green eyes or something. This next sentence is wild, so brace yourself. Wang and Jack regroup with one of the gangs fighting against Lo Pan. They all take cocaine in a lift, overrun Lo Pan's wedding ceremony. Jack kills Lo Pan, this man explodes, these two idiots are now in a relationship, and Jack drives off with the orangutan. Okay, quite a lot to unpack. That's all true, by the way, that all happens. That is a perfect summary. Okay, so first question, is it any good? I don't know. I don't think those are the correct terms in which to measure this film. It seems to exist somewhere beyond the binary of good and bad. It's something completely other. It's stupid. It's really funny, but it's really stupid. It's really funny if you can look past the creeping sensation that it might be trespassing on a million different cultural taboos. Then it's funny, if you can look past that. The fight scenes are just good old-fashioned mid-80s low-budget silliness. Except for the opening fight, which blew me away when I was 10, and when I watched it again for this review, still holds up. And it also showcases some actual Wing Chun techniques that you don't often see, like chain punching. I had a guy break one of my ribs when he demonstrated it on me a few years ago. It's very effective. So is it good? Well, it's up to you. If you already enjoy this kind of ridiculousness, then yeah, it's probably one of the best there's ever been. If you want something a little bit more highbrow, then maybe look to Platoon, which was released the same year, but is way more racist. But that brings me to my point, stereotypes. Big Trouble is a movie that traffics and trades only in stereotype and cliché. It openly embraces its very broad and semi-literate understanding of Chinese culture, and then subverts it so subtly that you probably didn't even notice it was doing it, but it is. The stereotypes themselves are very simple ones. Chinese people are either mystical or beautiful, and obviously they all know kung fu and are good at maths.
I need the money.
I got near $1,000 here, Wang.
1,148, Jack.
White people are either two-fisted meatheads or morally bankrupt nerds.
The more exotic, the better.
Women are either brides or whores. Now, I'm not Chinese. I can't imagine anyone's very surprised to learn that. But my point is, I'm not the right person to tell you if this movie is offensive to Chinese people. And I need to set aside the bizarre Western fetishization. Fuck! Always struggle with that word. I'm not Chinese, I can't tell you if it's offensive to Chinese people, and I need to set that argument aside. But to the few people with vested interests who I have spoken to about their opinion of Big Trouble in Little China, their opinion seems to be, could have been worse. From my narrow perspective, I can kind of forgive the movie for being all fizzy and excited about the Chinese culture that it repeatedly misrepresents. It's a strange and impenetrable place for outsiders, and that's almost by design. If you know anything about the nature of Guanxi, for example, about how success in China is dependent on relationships and networking, it goes some way to explain the impenetrability of Chinese society for an outsider like me and like Jack. That impenetrability is how strange legends and misconceptions about the place propagate. China is a hard place to look into from outside. It was even more so at that time. They'd only just recently started taking steps towards a free market. Tourism there was new, and Chinese cinema was exploding in the West. It was only in 1985, while this film was in development, that Wham became the first Western pop act to perform in China with an hour-long show on the Great Wall. George Michael called it the hardest gig of his life. He tried very, very hard to get a Chinese audience to clap along with the music, not considering that clapping is kind of a Western thing. Don't really do it in China. Can't stop burping. Now, saying a 40-year-old action movie doesn't stand up to our modern standards of cultural sensitivity is just not even a point. It's nothing. Of course it doesn't. My point is that Big Trouble in Little China is actually and deliberately a very, very damning indictment of white men. Bear with me. Why do I do this to myself? I told you to buckle up. Okay, fact 1. Jack Burton is not the star of Big Trouble in Little China. It's Wang's movie from start to finish. It's Wang's story. Jack is the sidekick. Jack has no right to be in the movie at all. He's a passenger in Wang's story. And he's not even that good a sidekick. I mean, he's brave, but he knocks himself unconscious at the start of one fight. And for the main fight, he gets himself trapped under one of Lo Pan's guards. For the whole thing. Meanwhile, Wang is getting shit done. He's fighting everybody. He's organising the gang members, leading from the front, even getting the girl. Fact 2. That's the way it's supposed to be. The writers, director and Kurt Russell all set out deliberately to subvert the idea of a hypermasculine white male star. Fact 3. The writer of Big Trouble also wrote the screenplay for Total Recall. Everyone remembers Total Recall as this gory action fest with bulging muscles and mutants and stuff. But they forget the premise of the film is that the whole thing is a fantasy. None of it happens. We don't ever meet the real Douglas Quaid. Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall is playing a hypermasculine idealization of a completely ordinary man. That movie too is a movie all about masculinity. The author of the original book on which Total Recall is based, Philip K. Dick, said so openly. Fact 4. Wang's character is kind of groundbreaking. Wang as a leading man is unusual not just because he's not white, but also because he's a good man. His role is unusual because he can kick ass like a conventional leading man, but he has something that most alpha male characters suppress. He's very sweet. He's in love and he's not afraid to express it.
This is a big day in my life. I'm gonna marry her, Jack. But I haven't seen her in 5 years. I can't eat, sleep, or think properly without her anymore. She's gonna put my whole life in order. Boy, listen to me, huh? Real tough guy, yeah?
That's important because he wins. Usually, you can bet cold cash that the loved-up sidekick is going to die. John Carpenter wants to say that being a man is more than about trucks and meat and guns and muscle. Now, if all of that seems like a bit of a stretch, like a bit of a reach, then you're not alone. The studio didn't get it either. 20th Century Fox thought they were getting a magical, fantastical John Carpenter martial artsy summer action flick. That's what the movie looks like on paper. But when Fox realised that Carpenter had given them the old bait and switch, and they instead had an action movie without a white male star, they made him film an extra scene, that bit that I spoofed in the intro. That scene with Egg Shen and the lawyer was filmed months later and added at the start, just and purely to establish Kurt Russell as the lead. But he's not. Never was. The studio tried to market Jack Russell. The studio tried to market Jack Burton as an action hero. But that was never gonna work, because Jack Burton was never supposed to be the hero. He was supposed to be an indictment of that kind of characterization. That's why the movie flopped. Cognitive dissonance. The movie was not what the audience expected it to be, because the marketing for it had been wrong from the start. What happened was that the marketing appealed to meatheads like Jack, who went to the cinema to see a meathead movie. And then the movie mocked meatheads exactly like them. It's not a profitable strategy. Plus the movie came out the same weekend as Labyrinth, Short Circuit, Aliens and Karate Kid 2. So a kind of weird and unconventional movie like Big Trouble in Little China was always going to be kind of dead on arrival. Now, whatever you think of Kurt Russell, he is a smart guy. He's a political libertarian, naturally suspicious, or at least questioning of masculine culture that he actually helped himself to create and define with movies like Escape from New York. In Big Trouble, he is directly and deliberately imitating John Wayne, or at least the John Wayne prototype. It's something he's done in a few of his films. Now, the point that Kurt Russell is making with his characterization of Jack as this kind of big, fighting, brawny lunk is that the heroic John Wayne archetype is actually harmful to our identity as men. Jack Burton is, in a sense, the only honest representation of that character type. As men, we want to aspire to that hypermasculine ideal, but it's an impossible standard because that ideal simply does not exist. Jack is a character entirely defined by his masculinity. He turns up in the movie driving a truck called the Pork Chop Express. I mean, it's right there for you. Pork Chop Express. Just compare him to his secondary performance in the movie as this kind of average white dude. This character contributes absolutely nothing. It's absolutely not necessary to the film for this scene to even exist. It is only in the film, only to contrast and compare stereotypes about white American dudes. That's it. You could lose that scene entirely and the film would be no different. It just puts Kurt Russell in a suit. That's it. Jack Burton is the fantasy, the brawny bluster and bravado type, and Henry Swanson here
Henry Swanson's my name, and excitement's my game.
is the reality. And the truth is, they're both fucking useless. The film is directly attacking the people that the studio thought the film was for. It's Wang doing all of the heavy lifting in this. That's why it's important that this film exists. Because it's paid its dues. And when some wild-eyed, 8-foot-tall maniac grabs your neck, taps the back of your favourite head up against the barroom wall, looks you crooked in the eye, and asks you if you paid your dues, you just stare that big sucker right back in the eye, and you remember what old Stu Nugent says. Have you paid your dues, Stu? Yes, sir. The check is in the mail.